Welcome to the gold standard, Making Millions with Malia, the place to be for conscious CEOs and light leaders who know that they have an enormous mission that requires millions to fuel it. I am your host, Jennifer Longmore, Clear Channel for Mother Malia, along with being a long-standing 8-figure CEO, investor, and board advisor who is committed to creating as many conscious millionaires as I can in this lifetime, and to debunk the broke healer paradigm that tells you it is not benevolent to make millions doing spirit-led work. We are in the midst of individual and collective ascension, and as we ascend, so must the way that we do business and money as light leaders. That is what this show is all about. So tune in now and find out why we are ranked in the top 5% of global podcasts and why savvy CEOs just like you binge our show each week and share it as a high-value resource with their communities. Now let's dive into today's Making Millions broadcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the Gold Standard Podcast. I am Mother Malia, the Great Mother, and I am very excited to speak with you today and for the next several episodes because we are going to be talking about, in a series I'm going to call the 7-Figure Initiation, how to alchemize business trauma into gold. You have likely already listened to the Money Magic series around how to alchemize trauma into gold, meaning trauma from our childhood. But one of the things that often gets talked about behind closed doors in masterminds and one-on-one mentorship calls and colleague calls, etc., are all of the traumas that happen in business that are kind of kept behind closed doors, but really, frankly, need to be talked about because they are more common than what we think they are. And because they're not talked about, then if you're experiencing them, you might think, oh, goodness, am I the only one experiencing this? What is wrong with me? Etc., etc. And so today, I'm going to dive in and share, of course, some of mine, but of course, from the purpose of supporting you. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about is the trauma from team sabotage. So what do I mean by that? Well, it can happen in a lot of different ways. In my situation, this was many, many years ago. I had hired a company that I knew intuitively, and keep in mind, any issues I've ever had in my business, and perhaps you can relate, have always been on the other side of me not honoring my intuition. We often say, oh, I'm not intuitive. No, we are. It's a matter of, are we honoring the intuitive hits, you know? Years ago, one of my team members got very sick and she couldn't work anymore. And it all happened kind of quickly. I needed to find a new team member. And I went on, the various sites at the time. I can't really recall what year it was. I'm going to say it was probably about 2012. I'm going to say probably somewhere around there. And eeny, meeny, miny, mo, no one was really, rising to the occasion, so to speak. But this one couple, they were a married couple. And I thought, okay, well, they seem to know. I mean, you never really know, as you know, everyone, if you have team members, you don't really know if someone's going to work out until you get them inside the company. So they were doing okay, I suppose. And I had many other people because as you may know, it is not the easiest to find team members that have a certain work ethic and so on. So many of my colleagues said, hey, who's your VA and support team right now? And I shared the name. I said, I don't know much about them. I'm just starting with them. I'm not referring them to you because I can stand behind their work, but I do know they're taking more clients. So feel free to fill your boots kind of thing, And so I would say probably about 5 of my clients hired them. And unbeknownst to each of us, they were doing the same things in each of our business. And so then, of course, we will get more and more irritated with them. And then, of course, the more irritated we got with them for not following basic protocol, at times I wouldn't even hear from them for a week, things like that. Things that are just basic, then you get more irritated, of course. And so they decided, they were basically, I suppose the term would be now, they were quiet quitting, and they were doing that with a few of my colleagues. And but I, of course, take my mission very seriously, as you know. And so that's kind of how it feels. Like I've got this important mission to spread. And where are you? This is not what I signed up for, because they're still getting paid, by the way. Anyways, there was a lot going on there, but I don't quite know what was going on with them, but I've got to think that there is some sort of mental health issue. And the reason why is because they didn't just sabotage the back end of my business, but they did it to my colleagues, because they were also having issues. And I didn't even get the worst of it, I will share, okay? But what happened was they decided to I don't know how to say it properly, but basically they wiped out the whole back end of my business. All of the links, the payment links, the program links, the email list, everything. And fortunately, the email list was found in some sort of cloud so we could restore it. But I also had, and by the way, in restoring that cloud, we found that there were about 5,000 emails just sitting there that were associated with a free gift that we had been sharing that nobody ever received. And we never entered those emails because they didn't hook it up to our system. You get what I'm saying? And it's not that I needed those people on my email list from a numbers game. It was that I don't like telling people I'm going to give them something and finding out that they didn't get it. I will never want them to think that I'm going to promise them something and not get it to them. So so needless to say, this is what happens, as you know, and it's happened to me before, because I say, oh goodness, it's a lot of work to hire a team and train them. It slows down the momentum of the company, da 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 da. I'll put up with this because there's no fires. I'll wait until things slow down and then I'll hire their replacement. But that's never going to happen, is it? And I've been here before. But look at it, it didn't cost me, right? It cost me $20,000. And that was, however many years ago, to restore the back end of my business, to have someone do it and completely slow down the business, right? It did the very thing that I was trying to prevent it from not doing by hanging on to these people that I already knew months prior really, weren't meant for my company and really, frankly, shouldn't have hired them at all. Now, they did similar things with my other colleagues, but my one colleague, they made fake reviews of them on Google, bashing her business, saying she was a fraud, complained about her to the Better Business Bureau, and now there's a file on her there. Did Yelp reviews. They went to town, really, really trying to defame her. And it was quite devastating for her. She never really bounced back from that, frankly, because the reason why this trauma is important, why I'm talking about it today, is because it's going to kick up stuff, isn't it, from childhood? It's going to kick up the when the kids turn on you on the playground. It's going to come up if your parents kind of set you up, if they played games with you where they will set you up to fail so that they can then make you wrong and various things. So it's definitely going to poke at childhood stuff. But also, when you're ready to grow, don't you notice that these things kind of happen? And so then what happens? Unconsciously, you start to associate growth with team sabotage. Or, for example, when you are in growth mode and you say, oh, goodness, we're growing so much, we're going to have to hire some more people, then you're going to push and pull with hiring, as I did. Because I thought, well, clearly I can't trust myself. I know I'm intuitive. I give very clear readings to my clients, but I don't trust my own channel. It wasn't my channel that was untrustworthy. It was just that I was not honoring the hit, because my need to just have someone in place was greater than saying, hey, why don't I just try a few more sources, be a little more resourceful and see what else is out there before I just settle, because that's what it was. I was settling. And so I brought that settling into energy into my company. And that was my experience the whole time. I felt like I was constantly, chasing for work. I would have to constantly send work back because the things that they would send through would be really subpar, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, then and rightly so, in their mind, they're thinking, well, goodness, if we can't make her happy, but they weren't taking the feedback. You see what I'm saying? Now, granted, too, my leadership definitely could have used some work, because I also, I didn't ever want to come across as bossy. So I would almost put myself in the buddy zone, or the friend zone. And then, of course, when you're in the buddy or the friend zone with your team, they think they're doing you a favor. They literally, whether they know it or not, unconsciously, they say, oh, well, I'll get to it when I can because I'm helping them out as their buddy, you see. So, needless to say, as I mentioned with my one colleague, she never really bounced back. I don't even know if she even hired any team after that, but if she did, she definitely micromanaged them, which also didn't help her cause for growth because she really didn't need a team then if she was pretty much paying them to do the work that she was just going to do anyways, you see. But for me, and this is the case for many, when you decide you want to grow, your team, if they can't come with you, will reveal itself very quickly. That's part one. But also part two is that as you grow, you know that you need to hire more people. But if you have residual trauma that you haven't cleared around this, then you will slow your ability to grow simply because if team really is the missing link and you're nervous about hiring team and who can I trust and who can I not, etc., then you're going to be in a bit of a standstill, right? And so then you're going to perhaps start throwing money at the wrong problems. Oh, the reason I'm not growing is because of my mindset. Oh, the reason I'm not growing is because I need to take this sales course, etc. And so you'll keep throwing money at the wrong problem and the problem won't shift. And I'm saying problem loosely, of course, because the real issue is that the trauma needs to be evaporated, right? And some restoration of trust in self, trust in channel, etc., needs to be restored. Now, on a very practical level, what I ended up having people do is I might, for example, have colleagues also interview them that I knew would maybe see things that I wouldn't because they were, not as close to it as I was, for example. And now, of course, with my COO, I simply have them interview all team members. It doesn't mean I won't also interview a team member. It frankly depends on their proximity to me. But I will have I will have them interview because I need them to look for, do they actually have the skills? I need you to assess for the skills that they're telling me they have that I simply may not know because I perhaps don't understand certain technology pieces, etc. But all this to say that if this applies, I really will recommend because it will, if you're here to build an empire, you see, you are going to need team and you will end up going down a shame spiral. What's wrong with me? How come I'm not growing? How come I'm doing all of the things, so to speak, when I'm not growing? When in fact, it could be trauma from things that happen with past team members. Now, the other ways that this plays out, as I mentioned, is the quiet quitting. I had that in my other company where we were booking people on podcasts. People would just not book people, tell me they were booking them, create fake things saying they were booking, and then I would find out, no, in fact, that wouldn't happen. And then I would come in because I know how to pitch very well, and I would maybe get 80 bookings for maybe 10 of my clients in about 2 hours of my time, just leveraging my relationship currency that I had, and I would think, well, how come I can do that in 2 hours and you can't do that in 40? But why would they? They're getting paid to do nothing, you see? And so, sadly, when it comes to team sabotage, this is a character issue, isn't it? It's a character issue. It's often not a skill issue, although sometimes it is. People, of course, that's still a character issue. They will say they have skills they don't, and so they can't mask it. At some point in the honeymoon period, people they are on their best behavior and they are exerting a lot of energy to try and make it look like they have the skills to help you. But if they're already at capacity, if they already are punching above their weight, so to speak, I suppose that's a term, then as soon as the honeymoon period starts to wear off, and usually before, but definitely by the time the 3 month mark is over, they should only be getting quicker with you, right? So if you're starting to have real problems, that's how you know that they either don't have the mastery of skills that they told you about, which means they blatantly lied to you, right? To get the job, to get paid, to not be performing at the level they claim they can perform at. Or they're simply choosing not to because it's a character issue. Maybe they can deliver, but they've just decided, nope, I'm not going to. But it can be, I've heard stories where key team members will gather other team members against the COO, and kind of create a coup. Or of course the NDA situation. Hopefully you have an NDA assigned with your team members so that they are not disclosing what happens in the company, not disparaging you once they move on. I have a colleague that still to this day, after I think it's been 5 years, still bashes her former business partner slash boss publicly. That's not classy. you know, and whether or not you like that boss, well, already then you see I can't be a colleague with this person because she's already told me she's not trustworthy. Is if you are going to openly to everyone who can listen and repeat it over and over again about, oh, this boss did this to me, that tells me that you're lacking in emotional regulation, of course, and business acumen and emotional maturity and such. But what you're actually telling me is you're untrustworthy, because whether that boss was actually a big poopy pants or not doesn't matter. The fact that that person really wants to keep talking about it and publicly out that person says that they cannot be trusted with company secrets. So why would I ever bring someone like that into my company? You know? So I pay attention to how team members talk about previous companies they've worked in or current companies they're working in. I pay attention to how my team members talk about their colleague circle. Is it a little bit too easy for them to gossip because they're only gossiping perhaps to compete, to make sure that you don't go hire one of their colleagues, for example? I mean, it's pretty nutty, isn't it, out in that world? But here's the thing: if you're wanting to get to six-figure months, you're going to need a team. You don't necessarily need a big team, but what you want to really be assessing for is can your team, if you don't have an aligned team with you that can really move with you, they calibrate to you and the speed that you move at and your work style, etc. If they can't do that, if they can't do that now, they're not going to be able to do that in the long term. They're not going to have endurance. It can create wobbles in the company culture. If you're constantly turning over, you're going to slow your growth, but perhaps that's what you want because you're afraid of that seven-figure leap, right? And so you'll create unconsciously, of course, invite in conditions, aka team members, because if I'm looking at it honestly, that's what I did. It was a money block for me, and I was just bringing in people that allowed me to stay in the plateau. And once I shifted that and my true willingness to allow far greater amounts of wealth, then I was able to call in the team that could really match with me and grow with that. But if you're not hiring adequate team, if you end up doing their work, or you're constantly wondering what's going on because you feel like, your buddy's owning yourself or whatever, you're not only going to cap your income, as I mentioned, but you're going to stay in the manager role versus CEO. You're going to be managing people, managing optics, managing projects, managing emotions, etc. And that's going to cost you six figures a month. And you need that six figures a month to grow, because a certain percentage of that is going to have to go back into things like team and perhaps ads and various things like that. So what I'm going to recommend is that you really take a look at, if this applies, what when you go back in history when you first hired them, what did you know to be true that you didn't want to admit to yourself? And given the price I paid for this, is this a valuable enough business lesson for me? Meaning, like, you could hire a mentor, let's say you could hire a mentor and pay them, in my case, 20K, and learn the things I learned from this. So sometimes, you learn better, frankly, when you have these situations than just having a mentor tell you, hey, you need to do this with your team. But was 20K enough for me to pay to go, yep, going forward, I'm going to do this instead with team? Yeah, I don't need to have that. And I don't worry about the 20K, by the way, because we know we can always replenish that, right? It's more about, okay, that needed to get my attention to help me clear a root issue within me that called that in, because that was the medicine for me. You see what I'm saying? I needed that medicine. I needed that team sabotage. This is where we alchemize business trauma into gold. It only helped me become a better leader. It only helped me pay attention to my intuition more. It only helped me release the places I was being a buddy instead of a boss, because I didn't want to be perceived as a big B. I associate the word boss with, being a bee, so to speak, right? Whether or not I'm a boss or bossy based on someone else's reality doesn't mean it's true. And it also doesn't mean it matters. What matters is my mission and having team that is working with me that understand the mission. So if this is something that is speaking to you, at least take a look at that. But if you would like support with that, Absolutely, I'm happy to support you with that. We can do that by way of coming into the Scale Mastermind, where it's a very small group mastermind. And of course, we work on growing your business and scaling you to six-figure months, etc. But naturally, we also take a look at the real issues that are going on, the real things that are keeping growth. It's never the strategy, sweethearts, as you know. It's never it's never the extra content creation. Yes, of course, some of the fiddly bits of the mechanics can help, of course. Yes, of course, we want to have a strategy. Yes, of course, we want to have a marketing ecosystem and all of the things, but those things are just two-dimensional, I will say. If the trauma and the blocks, etc., that allow them to be actualized are not being dealt with. We're only growing to the degree that we feel safe. And when we're holding on to trauma, we don't feel safe. So now it's a matter of saying, how do I alchemize this so that trauma is not the thing that's always going to be the barrier? And any of you that have been with me, you know this, and any of you that have been in programs with other coaches, ideally, you've likely seen this happen too. Like, oh, I thought I was joining this program for marketing, but it turns out I was actually needing to increase my standards and increase my leadership, for example. Because the thing is, we never have a money block, sweethearts. We have decisions that we're not willing to make, and we have conversations that we're not willing to have. And this is my case as an example in this situation is exactly that. Yes, of course, trauma contributes to that, but trauma is the byproduct of me not making the decisions and having the conversations I needed to have, such that I had an experience that was dumped in my lap and forced me to put out some fires. And I really don't like putting fires out of my business. As you know, I used to be a forensic investigator. I am all too familiar with being in crisis mode, and my adrenals and my kidneys, etc., are all too familiar with being in crisis mode. I refuse to be operating it as in a 911 capacity in my company, and so that is on me to because here's the other thing, everyone, by the way, and you'll hear me say this many times. When we have orange flags, as soon we tolerate them, we can tolerate orange flags. But what I want you to know about orange flags is that they might as well be red flags, okay? Because here's why. As soon as you grow, you're already barely dissonant. You're already barely resonant. You're almost completely dissonant with the orange flag. As soon as you up level and change your frequency, you are now completely dissonant with that orange flag. And that orange flag becomes a very bright red flag to put out. So you might think you're buying yourself some time, but as soon as that turns red, you are going to be in 911 mode. And then you're going to be reacting, and that's yet another distraction that slows you down. So I cannot recommend enough to write, and I do this. I have it on my MacBook. I have a running list of things I'm tolerating. I don't judge myself for it. I do this with my clients as well, because as soon as they grow, those tolerations are going to become fires very, very quickly. So I have a running list of tolerations, and I don't judge it. In fact, I love adding things to the things I'm tolerating. That means I'm upgrading. It means like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that's a thing I've outgrown, because at one point it was new to you. You didn't outgrow it. You appreciate it. But then at some point when you outgrow things, right, it just kind of feels lackluster, ho-hum, or a little bit crunchy. So I put my tolerations on there, and every week I say, okay, what tolerations am I going to clear out this week? I don't try to do them all, because if I focus on anywhere between 1 to 3 a week, they tend to take care of all the other ones, weirdly. It's a very fascinating phenomenon, but it is what it is. So write out your list of what are you tolerating? What are the decisions you're willing to make this week around that toleration? What are the conversations you're potentially needing to have? It might be a conversation with yourself, but usually it's with other people. And this is what we're avoiding, because we're conflict avoidant, because trauma keeps us in the avoidant or fawning mode oftentimes, right? But if we address this, then we won't be having so many red fires to put out. We won't be having orange flags slow us down. We definitely won't be having 911 fires everywhere that we have to put out. And then we can just grow at the speed of light. We can have those six-figure months, and then have those six-figure months become six-figure weeks, six-figure days, etc. But if you really would like support, the Scale Mastermind is a really great place to be able to do that. These are all awake and aware women. We are a small group because of it's a very high touch nature, and I'm happy to share more. You're welcome to email the team, clientcare@souljourneys.ca. Or, of course, find me on social media and message me about that. And then, of course, there's an opportunity to do that one-to-one. And working with me one-to-one is starting at 5 figures. It starts at a 5-figure investment. And I only share that because I am also just simply not able to handle money objections. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I make people wrong for that. I am now, because my vibration only keeps going up and up now that I'm in phase 2 of Mother Malia, I simply have no vibrational resonance whatsoever with money objections, because that is the problem paradigm. Okay, and I absolutely refuse to have my energy dishonored by having to convince people to sign up for something. Okay, because there's a whole other thing going on, which I will do another episode on, about what's really going on with the money, if you get what I mean. But I say that to manage expectations, because I'm really going to ask that you not reach out if you're not able to make one-to-one work a 5-figure financial priority. Okay. So I will love to hear how this served you. And if you feel it will serve others, I will really greatly appreciate that you share it. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, I will appreciate that as well, because the more people that subscribe, the more that the show is shared with other people, if you get what I mean by the algorithms and all of the AI stuff that, we kind of have a love-hate relationship with, of course. But that means more people get to benefit from the medicine that I'm sharing here. That's my point. So thank you very much for being here. I hope this was of high service to you, and I will talk to you very soon. Thanks for listening. Before you go, if you would like to have a chance to have your name and business featured on the Gold Standard podcast, hop on over to where you listen to this podcast and leave a review. If you're selected, you'll have your name and business featured on our show. And in the meantime, we wish you tons of financial blessings, and we'll see you soon for the next Making Millions transmission from Mother Malia.